Hi everyone, it's Lou Collins. Thank you so much for joining me for another Cricut based paper craft video. Now I'm really excited to do this one because I'm going to be using it for my son's teacher. So we're getting to the time of year at the moment when we're thinking about the children leaving off for the summer and we want to do teachers' gifts, and this is going to be absolutely perfect. I'm going to be using the Cricut Joy for the majority of this project, but I'm also going to be bringing in some paper craft techniques that I use. I'm going to show you a little bit on Cricut Design Space also, just so you can see how I got the design from my computer to the machine. The first thing I did was I cut myself a piece of cardstock, and this is just perfect to fit on my Cricut Joy mat. Now, the mat I've got is the standard one that comes in the box with the Cricut Joy. You can, of course, get longer mats. They are available. Now, all the tools that I'm using here, whether it be the paper crafting tools or whether it be the Cricut tools, they are all available on CraftStash, and that's where I get all of my supplies. Now, I'm going to first of all start with a blended panel, so an ink blended panel, and the colours I've chosen are Salvage Patina, Evergreen Bow and Pine Needles. So these are some lovely teals here, and I thought these would look really nice if I did them with maybe some gold sequins just sort of inside as a shaker. So if you've never made a shaker card before, using the Cricut Joy to create the aperture as such is so much fun. Now, you can make shaker cards, of course, that are just sort of circles or hearts or stars, something like that, and they can still be beautiful, but this is a little bit different. So this one's actually going to have wording as the aperture for the shaker, so you've got the sentiment on the card and then you've got the shaker element behind. So really, really good fun. So just starting by ink blending around about a third of my card with the Salvage Patina, the lightest colour, making sure that I've got into all the little nooks and crannies of the cardstock there. And I'm using the Creative Craft products. It's their stamping card that I use for my ink blending. So I'm just going along with all three of the colours, starting with the lightest, working my way up to the darkest. And I tend to just fill in the solid area first, making sure that's completely covered, and then I go back and I do sort of my ink blending once I've got my solid colour down. So to do my blending, I'm just going to pick up my lighter colour again and then just go over that join line, just little circles all the way along, and that just helps to blend the two colours together. Now, I'm not looking for perfection with this blending because I am going to be splashing a little bit of water over the top afterwards. Spritz on my hand and just flick a bit around. This is quite a common technique for anyone who loves their ink blending, particularly with distress inks and distress oxides there, and that's just going to give us a little bit more of a distressed look. Now, it takes a few moments to dry, but you can of course use a piece of wet kitchen towel just to lift off the dampness there, and you can see the effect that it's having on the ink in the background, so that's lovely. Now, before we go on to the next stage, you want to make sure this panel is completely dry because we're going to be putting it into our Cricut machine, and of course we don't want any dampness on the cardstock, because if there's dampness on the cardstock, as with any sort of cutting effect, you could potentially just tear the paper instead of cut it. So do ensure, and take time now to maybe clean up your mat and things, but do ensure that your cardstock is completely dry after your ink blending and water splatting. So just make a note of the size of your cardstock here and place it onto your mat. There we go. So as you can see, I cut mine in advance and I made sure that that was exactly the correct size for my mat there. So made a note of that, and now we're going to go over to Cricut Design Space. So in Cricut Design Space, I've got my canvas open, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a file. Now, the file I've chosen is from CraftStash. Thank you for being an amazing teacher. So I'm just going to add that to Canvas. Now, this has been designed by Emma Jewell, and it actually comes in really quite large. Now I've just, as you can see, I've just used my cursor to drag that into my screen a little bit. But as I highlight this with my cursor, you can see at the top there, this is 43.26 centimetres by 36.41 centimetres. That is far too large for what I want to use it for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink that down a bit. Now I'm just going to do it by using the squares on the corner for now, and I will adjust this again in a moment. Now, something else I'd like to do here is remove the splats, the stars that are at the top, and just have the wording. So I'm going to come over to the right hand side and I'm just going to highlight this first section here. Now if you have a look in this panel, this is where everything is sort of in its groups. We can hide all of that if we want to by clicking the arrow, but I've just expanded it. I've highlighted the yellow squares there, and I can simply hit delete on my keyboard to remove them. So now we've just got the words. Perfect. I'm just going to pop that to the side for now because I'll come back to that in a moment. I want to add a shape, and I'd like to add a rectangle, and I like that this rectangle has like the curved, if I enlarge that for you, it's got the curved corners. I really like that. So what I now need to do is ensure that that rectangle is going to cut out a mat for the front of our card that's going to fit on our card. Now with the Cricut Joy, the width of this mat needs to be less than, it's something like 11.46 centimeters. It will tell you if your rectangle is too large for your mat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to highlight my rectangle, come up to the top here, and it actually says size, and there's a little keypad or key lock there, sorry, padlock, and I'm going to click that to unlock it. I'm going to put my width in at 11.4 centimeters, and my height needs to be around, just measure your card base before you do this, but my height needs to be around about 16.7 centimeters. Now this is going to vary depending on the sort of card base you're working on, so do measure your card base first of all and decide which size you'd like your mat to be. Now press enter. If there is an issue with the size of your rectangle not fitting on your mat, when you come over here, it will actually have an exclamation mark here, and it will tell you that that size won't fit on your Cricut Joy mat. So good to check that. So now we can drag over our wording here. Now this is going to be my mat, and this is going to be the wording inside the mat. And if you want to, you can arrange and bring this forwards so that we can see it over our mat. Now that's going to fit quite nicely in there, like so. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to stretch this so it fills more of my rectangle. So to do that, I'm just going to pop up here to the the padlock. I don't know why I can't say padlock. Just there again, unlock that. So then when I move it, I can stretch it either way. And that way I can make it fill this space even more, like so. Now, if you wanted to add some additional shapes, like maybe some more stars or some hearts or something, you can do that at this stage. But I'm going to keep this card reasonably simple. So if I just enlarge this a little bit so we can really see it, we've now got, whoops, let's just go up to the top here. We've now got our rectangle, our mat and our layer, and we've also got our thank you for being amazing. Now I'm just going to make this ever so slightly smaller because I need to allow for foam tape around the edge. Now these are all cut lines and we are ready to go. If you want to make sure that you're happy with how everything looks, you can select it all and you can choose your colours, so you can make sure everything is white. There we go. That is more of a view of how our cut panel is going to look. So a couple more things you need to do before you send this to your machine. You need to select both items and you'll need to click slice down in the bottom right hand corner. Now what this is going to do is give you 3 results, and you want to keep the result that has both elements in, so that is your rectangle and also your wording. The other 2 results, you can click on those and you can press the rubbish bin icon just above them. So you should be left with 1 slice result, and that is your base card with your wording in. And this is all grouped together now, so you can move this around. You're going to want to put it up to the very top hand corner and just ensure that, again, that is going to fit on your mat. So just make it a little bit smaller than your mat ideally, so that the machine and Cricut Design Space actually recognises that you're going to want to put it onto a mat. Now click Make It. Now it's going to ask you whether you want to do this without a mat. So that's for Cricut Smart Materials, on a mat or on a card mat. We're going to be doing this on a mat. So we've got the mat size here, which is the 16.5 centimetre long one. If you have got the extendable mat, the longer mat, then you'll need to click this one. I'm going to remember this selection because this is what I tend to use. There we go, and we can now see our card base on our mat and ready to go. So I'm going to press continue, and I'm going to open up my Joy and allow that to connect to the Cricut Design Space. So in Cricut Design Space, it's now asking me to load my mat into the machine, which I'm going to do, ensuring it's the correct way up with my ink blending so that my lighter ink blending is at the top. So once the Joy has done what it needs to and it's loaded the mat and it's ready to go, I can simply click go on Cricut Design Space, and that's going to send this to my machine. So now that's finished cutting, I just need to go back to Cricut Design Space and unload my mat. So I can see there I've got my design all cut out absolutely beautifully. So now that's all been popped out, once I put it onto my card, you can see how well that darker ink blended background stands out. Thank you for being an amazing teacher. So we're going to make this into a shaker card, and the way I'm going to do that is to bring in a piece of acetate, and I'm going to put that onto the back of my wording. So the best way to do that is with red line tape. There we go, and then I'm just going to place this over the top, making sure that my wording is all encased within the acetate panel. So next we're going to want to put this onto our white cards there, and I'm going to use foam tape. So again, we're going to apply the foam tape to the coloured panel rather than the card base, all the way around the edge, making sure this time that the foam is touching at each of the corners. So we want to ensure that none of the glitter or the sequins or whatever you choose to put in there as a shaker, making sure none of that can get out any little gaps. Now this is the beauty of using the Cricut Joy rather than a die cutting machine. I haven't had to think about lining up my wording within my mats and layers. I could have very, very easily also cut a second mat ever so slightly larger on my machine to go behind this too. And I can do lots and lots of these. If I want to send one of these to 5 of their teachers, I can easily rattle off 5 of these cards in absolutely no time at all. If you want to then make them slightly different by changing the wording, again, you can do all of that. So now I just need to choose my my glitter or my sequins or my gems. Probably put a few more. We can probably afford to have quite a few in there. But the beauty of this is that it's going to look wonderful even if you don't see the shakers through. If you're only seeing the white cardstock behind, it's still going to look really good. So I've got a little bit of an overlap of the adhesive there, so just putting that down flat. There we go. And then I'm going to pop this just over the top there in the centre of my card base and press down everything. There we go. So now I have thank you for being amazing. So there's a fun card made really quickly and easily with the Cricut Joy. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. If you're brand new to using the Cricut Joy, we have a video series with CraftStash teaching you from the very beginning, unboxing, a lovely video series that's going to take you all the way through to creating projects. If you are already a paper crafter and you have a Cricut Joy but you don't use it much, do stay tuned to these series, because we're going to be talking through lots and lots of different card making techniques using it. I'll be back again very soon with another video. Take care.